Hi, Alissa.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm outstanding.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So, what was Alissa Quinn like as a little girl?
That is a great question. My earliest memories is I grew up in an incredibly loving family. So I am just incredibly fortunate that I had a dad who was a professor at Union College, and so education from my earliest memories were very important. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was an artist by training and self-taught. So I just grew up in a household of love, of cultural enrichment, whether that was food, music, dance. It truly was a wonderful backdrop. So some of my earliest memories are going folk dancing with my parents when I was very young. They used to do folk dancing at the YWCA of Schenectady, now known as the Greater Capital Region, and or Northeastern New York, excuse me. So bottom line, I just grew up in a happy household, and I was always a serious student, so grades were important. I was a parent pleaser. I did focus on my schoolwork and academics, and always wanted those excellent and outstanding check marks, so they were important to me. So I grew up in a fun, loving, but academically serious focus, even as a young girl. So I did gymnastics, I did folk dancing, were my earliest memories as more that free loving, child. But I remember a time where we walked to elementary school and we had girlfriends along the way. So it was kind of like a friendship chain that we walked together. So very fond memories. And I grew up in the same household that my parents lived in for 50 years. So we didn't move around, and I just had a great foundation for sure.
Yeah. You've mentioned dance a couple times,
Okay.
And I know you have a passion for dance in general, and so we want to hear a little bit about that. Do you remember the first time that you really knew that you wanted to be a dancer, or something captured you where you said, whoa, I need to be a dancer?
Yeah. So the interesting part about that was I saw my mother at age 75 do a quick step with a professional instructor at the time. I had seen her dance casually with my dad over the years, and anytime we had parties in the household, because my dad was a professor, he would have students over at our house. We would roll up the carpets and everybody would join in, and he would teach them folk dancing from every ethnicity around the globe. And so whether it was traditional Greek music or Romanian music or Hava Nagila, I just grew up with this love of dance within the household. But it wasn't until I saw my mom's quick step in a more formal setting of ballroom dance, where I saw the beautiful gown and the posture and the elegance that she carried herself with, that I was absolutely positively in love with that form of dance. And I turned to my husband at the time and I said, honey, hello, we've raised these two phenomenal, young adults at the time. And I said, I just want to try. I don't know if I have two left feet, if he has two left feet. We've been together since I was 14, he was 17. We had taken, a few classes along the way for our wedding, dance, but nothing of serious. So to see my mom do this quick step with such elegance, that's when I, in earnest, turned to my husband and said, let's give it a try. And I was so thrilled beyond belief that he was willing to do it with me. So we started with formal instruction and did it together as a couple. And then over the years, it's just simply blossomed and bloomed over time, because I have truly loved every single minute of the formality and the structure of that type of dance. Folk dance is although it has patterns and you're following it, it's much more casual, whereas the ballroom style in general, the waltzes, the tangos, foxtrot, quick steps, have a more formal structure to them. And again, of course, I absolutely do love the beautiful gowns and the makeup and the whole to-do about performing in a showcase. So, but it was that early memory of watching my mom perform that truly I was inspired beyond. And at the time where, again, I was running a business, having children that were, launching in their academic efforts and doing very, very well. But it was also time for my husband and I to find something that we could also do together and enjoy. And truly, for me, it was about carrying that legacy that my parents set early on in their, again, 54-year relationship. It was all about love and the wonderful story about how my mom and dad met is through dance. And my dad was part-time while he was doing his PhD dissertation in New York City. He was a dance host. And so he was supposed to, the rules of engagement are you're supposed to dance with all the ladies in the audience. And he took one look at my mom, and basically she got most of the dances that night. And so they literally danced together for 50 years after that. And truly an incredible love story unfolding. So for me, dance was that joyful part of their relationship. It was work. It was hard work. It's not an easy thing to do. And frankly, it's not easy to do with a spouse that, it's a challenge. We both, advance at different stages. We both have different styles, just as my parents did. But if you love it enough and you want it to be part, then it's worth working at and pursuing. And so that's what I've been doing.
So I would love to hear about the mistakes. I'm all about entrepreneurship, and a lot of times people say you fail a million times before you really thrive, and so sometimes it's those mistakes along the way that lead to fabulous results in the end. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear about what those first steps in dance and some of the mistakes you made to get you where you are. Because I've seen you now and you're pretty good. So tell me about a mistake.
Yeah. So I love this story. Is when I first started dancing, I think because I grew up in a way that you're always striving for excellence. And so excellence to me is truly doing your best, but also performing at a level where I would feel comfortable enough dancing in public. So it took me quite some time to feel comfortable. We took a weekly lesson, my husband and I, and we would get to a stage where we would get through most of the figures, the basic figures, but there are so many types of ballroom dance. And so you can look at all of the smooth and the elegant, the international style dances, waltz, tango, foxtrot, Viennese waltz, quick step. And then on the Latin side, you have cha-cha, rumba, swing, samba, salsa. I mean, the list goes on. So just getting basic figures for any one of those and then go to a social dance. They typically would hold them on Sundays at that time and still do. I honestly was petrified. I was petrified to go to one of those first social dances because I thought, well, what are people going to do when they look at me and say, you have parents that are these phenomenal dancers, and so as you're first learning to dance, what are they going to think because I'm just a beginner? And sure enough, my very first dance I went to, it was at a huge roller skating rink, so the ambience wasn't anything, particularly elegant. Sure. But again, my heart was pounding out of my chest. I'm going to get on that floor and I'm just going to do my best. And they have these mixers where you dance with different people around the room. And sure enough, my very first time out on the dance floor, this gentleman who looked like he was an accomplished dancer said right to my face, "I can't believe you don't know how to dance. With parents like yours, I can't believe you don't know how to dance." No. And my absolute worst nightmare come true was that's what somebody would say to me. Yeah. So he did. The saving grace was about 2 years later. We were dancing in the same kind of social circles, and I had the opportunity to dance with him. And he looked at me and goes, "I can't believe you got so good." So there was redemption. So it truly was. It was fear because, again, when I'm used to being a senior vice president in my work environment and doing what I do professionally exceptionally well and holding myself to a very, very high standard, to do something completely out of my comfort zone. Folk dancing is one thing. Ballroom dance in a much more structured way is something altogether different. So I did it that first time, and I got right back out there that following Sunday and just kept at it. And every week, truly, I have enjoyed every step of the process. But it was humbling, for sure. And the mistakes in the beginning were many, and just have to get over them.
So what can you relate, and tell me what you can and can't talk about in terms of your work world?
Sure.
Your dance does dance come into other elements of your life, like work and things, the things that you learn there? How does that translate into your life, as an executive?
So that is a very interesting, thought-provoking concept. The idea for me is any executive, any professional, any business owner, and that's truly what I have, is I own my own business in the sense that you're developing your own relationships. I work with a team of folks. I have a corporate backdrop, but the reality is it is my business. It is my reputation, and that's why I have truly put my heart and soul to building this business since 1987, going on my 33rd year, and it truly is a male-dominated industry still. Literally these 33 years later, there are approximately 15% women financial advisors in the industry, and truly that's the way it was in 1987 when I started my training in the World Trade Center, 104th floor of the Twin Towers. And it really was a remarkably challenging industry in that it was entrepreneurial. And I think a lot of misconceptions is that you're doing a lot of financial planning, which is clearly what we do, but it is how you're building your business. So how dance comes into that, it really for me is the intensity of what I do during my business day. You're always looking to help our clients fulfill their goals, fulfill their dreams, uncover what those dreams are, let them talk about them in a way that they can envision it, that they can think about it. It's the whole concept of if you can think it, you can believe it. And if you can't even think it, there is no way you're going to achieve it. So our team is very, very focused on planning. We have a very serious business plan. My team would joke with you, our business plan is awesome. 26 pages thick, wow. As you can appreciate. Yeah. It is very focused. It is very detailed. That is the same kind of planning we suggest and encourage all of our clients, whether they're young professionals, whether they're seasoned executives, or they have had a lifetime of experiences, that there's always more, that there's always goals, there's always life's riches. And so how do we plan for those things? We truly help them by having conversations, getting them to think about it, to talk about it. So dance ties into that because I'm willing to share that side of me, of which is frankly a feminine process. And initially when I was in, as a vice president in this, financial services industry, I frankly wasn't comfortable talking about my first forays into dance because I felt it really was too feminine for managing the seriousness of resources and money that I've been managing for high net worth families all these years. So once I finally got into my own authenticity and in my comfort level to say and to kind of whisper, I just started ballroom dancing and oh my gosh, it's terrifying, but exciting all at the same time. Mm-hmm. What is it that you might want to do that you've never thought of? Mm-hmm. And it engages the conversation to say, geez, I was really thinking about, this hobby or this craft and how that could tie into a later on goal, maybe a business down the road, maybe a retirement hobby turns into an entrepreneurial opportunity, mm-hmm. and maybe it ties into a very successful financial entity. So it ties in the sense that we just want to help clients think about what are their dreams. And along the way, it's being willing to share our own vulnerabilities and our own joys and passions, and that is perfectly fine. In fact, I remember a great particular situation where I had been asked to do a newspaper article at the Times Union, and it was called My Other Life, and it was in the business section. I remember that section, yes. And so the writer had asked me many years in a row to say, would you be willing to share that other side of you? And I was just reluctant at the time, again, because I was in an office of all, male financial advisors. I was the only woman for many years. And so I finally got to a point where I became a mom and a vice president in the same year. And I said, you know what, it's time for me to be comfortable with femininity and the special parts of make me a great financial advisor. And so he had asked me, so this writer had asked me about doing the article, and I finally said yes. And so I sent her a picture of me in this gorgeous white ball gown, lifting my dress and skirt out to the side, looking over my shoulder. And I said, here I am. And she used that photo. And I remember Wally Altus, who was the president of the chamber at the time. We went to one of the big breakfasts, and it happened to be on finance, interestingly enough. And it was a very male audience at the time. I would say it was probably about less than 10% were women in that particular entree. And he just looks at me like 5 tables over, and he mouths, "Nice picture." And so at that point, I felt like, if the president of the Chamber of Commerce is condoning my, fanciful, interest in ballroom dance, that's fine. It's absolutely fine. And after that, I really embraced it and learned to love, to share the story, and to let people really think about what's important to them, to inspire them that whatever it is. I literally started dancing 15 years ago. So, it wasn't early in life. I was never a ballerina. I was never a tap dancer or jazz or anything. I did that folk dancing with my parents, but it didn't really prepare me for the rigors and the structure of showcase ballroom dancing.
Right.
So,
and you mentioned dreams a lot. Of course, my whole company is based on, it's called Hammock Life, and it's a metaphor for living the life of your dreams. And so I'm curious, what do you have a 5-year plan, and what are your dreams for the next 5 years or so?
So yes, I am very much focused. In fact, one of the exercises that we did in the financial services industry literally 20 years ago was the trainer had asked us to, we were in an all-day training period, literally from 8 o'clock in the morning probably till finishing up at 10 o'clock at night after a working dinner. And he said, your homework for the evening is to write a retirement speech, and to write it in the third person, so somebody else is giving this retirement speech, and you need to deliver it tomorrow at 8 a.m. in front of this group of people that you don't know. So it was a daunting task to really think about what is a 20-year plan going to look like. We'd focus on 5-year, 10-year, but the reality is that was a daunting process. But bottom line, I came home and it was fascinating. I got up and sat in my bed with a little yellow pad. This was pre-email or iPads or iPhones. It really was getting out the yellow pad and just saying, okay, what is it going to look like? And who is it going to be given by? And interestingly enough, I picked my business partner, Carol Neckars, who's been my best friend and partner in crime in the business world and in friendship over the last 22 years. And she was the one giving it. And so it lays out a picture of what that looks like. And so far, I'll say it's pretty darn close of the things that I had thought about then. So again, it comes back to always having a plan. So for me, 5 years down the road, I just want to continue to help people. Really genuinely help them see what their vision is. And I'm not done yet. I just really feel that every single conversation, every single person I meet, it's that fun story, as a stranger is a friend you just haven't met yet.
Right.
I mean, I really believe that I can have chemistry with somebody just for the simplest connection. It may be something we have very little perceivably in common, but all of a sudden it just turns into an incredible relationship. And so I'm always willing to just peel those layers of the onion a little bit.
Right.
So the more people I can help along the way, this journey, for 5 years, for 10 years more, I've got a lot of fire still in me and a lot of passion. And as long as I can really make an impact, because that's what I genuinely keep thinking is, God, what is my plan? What do you want from me? And I just keep hearing, keep going, keep making an impact, keep trying, keep willing to be vulnerable, keep willing to share those passions, the challenges, because it's not easy. Life, deals you lemons along the way. And sometimes everybody's perceptions of their lives are, everybody's got a perfect life. Everybody has some challenges that they're dealing with. So helping individuals, couples, families, multi-generationals work through those challenges, that keeps me going. I hope to do it for a very, very long time beyond that 5 years.
Yeah, I remember the first time I met you, actually. I remember where it was, and I remember that the conversation was meaningful. There was a lot going around us, and I remember that I like to have meaningful conversations when I'm in a networking environment, so I'm not flitting around to having, just handing out business cards and things like that. And so it was impactful to me, and so I want to hear a little bit about the group that we talked about, the group that you belong to, that is so impactful to you, and the connection that we had through that, and how that happened. So
I do remember that conversation. I remember where it was, and I think there was just been a little switch that has gone off in me as a result of this experience, and I've been very reticent, in all honesty, to talk about it publicly. I've talked about it a little bit, and you were one of the first people that I just felt that it was time to begin having these conversations more than with my just closest circle. So my experience was, literally it's exactly 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And for somebody who's been incredibly healthy her whole life, I have always felt great. I have been dancing for the past 15 years, as we've talked about. I was shocked. I mean, absolutely, positively shocked that this could have happened. I have no or very, very little family history. So it was clearly the initial, diagnosis is truly, incredibly scary. But I just honestly made a decision. Number one, I had a 16-year-old daughter at the time. My son just turned 20. I'm in this phenomenal relationship with my husband, who we've been together literally 32, going on 33 years. I knew I was surrounded by an incredible support system. And that there was no other choice. This was going to be a blip in the radar. I was going to tackle this experience just like I've tackled everything else in my life, which is one step at a time, one relationship at a time, one diagnosis at a time, one experience at a time, and take the information, use the resources that I have at my disposal to be able to put together an incredible team of people to help me through this experience. And I will say it was an enormously challenging experience in that my situation was technically, medically very complex. And so the first initial challenges that I had with the initial doctor that I had seen, she said, no, this is perfectly natural. There's nothing wrong with you. This is, you're at this stage of life, and there's no need to explore it further. Mm-hmm. And my intuition, my gut instincts were, I know my body, and you know what? I'm going to listen to this little instinct, and I'm going to pursue it and to pursue it and to pursue it. And honestly, I did. It was like a battle just to get the medical assistance that I needed when I knew there was something not quite right. And so the reality is, at that point in time, the doctor was shocked because there, in fact, was this diagnosis. And so the reality is, not only did I switch doctors, I felt it was important to get second, third, fourth opinions because of the complexity. And interestingly enough, wasn't it the personal relationships that I've developed all of my life? One was a professional women's organization I founded literally 30 years ago with a great team of executive women, all in different disciplines. And so there was a doctor, there was an oncologist, there was an attorney who defends doctors. There were just close friendships. And I said, ladies, who do we know? How do I get in? How do I get to see this person? And frankly, it was through those real professional connections and friendships that those are the ones that got me to the right connections, to the right medical team. And interestingly, how it ties into the dance side of things is one of the gals that heard about my situation, she said, if you ever need another oncology second opinion, my husband happens to head up the medical lab at St. Mary's Hospital in Amsterdam. And I turned to her and I said, Fred, the one I've been dancing with for the past 5 years? And she said yes, because on the dance floor we don't talk about our professions. We're there for the escapism, for the true stress reduction, stress relief. And so there are many high-level executives who are in that ballroom world. So I really did utilize my really close connections and was willing to reach out to them for help. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned along the way is because I've always been one that has been there to give help, whether it's to my family, to my friends, to my circles, I've always been the one to try to help. And so to be on the reverse side of needing help, honestly, it was one of the most terrifying experiences, not only because of the diagnosis, but that I also had to rely on other people. And then there was that final light bulb moment, which meant that, Alissa, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign, it's an opportunity to connect and have deeper relationships, which is what I have always felt so strongly about, which is why I took that risk with you, just because of the openness that I felt with you in that conversation, which is it's okay to share this. It's okay to hope that, God forbid, there is another woman that you might know or somebody in the audience might know that is going through something and they're scared. They're scared to ask for help. They're scared to ask for second opinion. They're scared to question, the medical community that we perceive to be, expert in all. The reality is it's a partnership. We work together with our medical community, but it's important to question. It's important to make sure that you really are finding the right team to help you through such an incredibly difficult time. And so I did end up going through major surgery. I did go through 5 months of chemotherapy. I did lose all of my hair. And again, just voicing that, it was such a vulnerable time, but because I am and known as the Queen of Bling, I felt that, you know what, gosh darn it, I was going to find a way to look fantastic every step of the way. So I bought these beautiful wigs, and I had my hairdresser cut them in a style that was exactly my own. And honestly, if I put a picture of me right next to me right now, I looked almost identical, and I felt great. And if you feel great, you can look great, and vice versa. And so I just simply, while I was going through it, chose to just keep it in my close circles. But after I got through the experience, once I went through all of my chemo, literally a month later, I was on the dance floor. I was doing a performance, so I had not skipped a beat in 10 years of being on the dance floor. And I did a performance, and the first one was The Prayer by Josh Groban, and others about just lifting me up. I did one with my husband, that I've loved you for 1,000 years. Very emotional, but it was a part of healing. And so dance can do more than just have it be great exercise and stress relief. For me, it was, I'm going to get back on that dance floor. In fact, I stayed on the dance floor the whole way through, even through chemo, even through surgery. And I remember telling the owners of the dance studio, "Oh, I'll see you in 9 months. Once I get all my hair back and once I get through this process." And I really thought I was going to just hibernate and see nobody, because I couldn't perceive what it would be like being in public going through this experience. And gosh darn it, I just changed my attitude very quickly after that and said, I am going to dance through this. In fact, that's kind of the title of the book that's kind of swirling around in my head, Dancing Through the Storm, my life story. And maybe someday there'll be a point where I engage in that process and look at the chapter. So the best part of this experience was once I got through the other side, at the end of it, because I had this support and strength that I was surrounded by, the one concept, to get back to the real question that you had for me, was this group. I thought that if I had gone through this experience, there must be other women that might be going through this type of experience, other executives who have been touched by cancer. And so it was at the American Cancer Society Gala that I walked into that room, and I saw literally hundreds of people, and all of them were fundraising for, in memory of, in honor of somebody. And I just felt it was time for me to say, this is the time that you're going to need to begin to share. So when it got to my table, I raised my paddle and I gave, a financial contribution, and I just said, it's in honor of me. And the rest of the people at the table just kind of, looked at me and like, what do you mean? Because again, up until that point, I just wasn't willing to share. And so after that, I literally waltzed over, and I noticed that Jane and Neil Golub were in the audience, who are incredible supporters in our community for so many different charitable causes. And at the time, I didn't know Jane particularly well, but clearly just an admirer from afar, and just an enormous role model for all executive women in our community. And I walked up to Jane and I said, you know what, Jane, I just wanted to share something very personal with you. I've recently gone through, this cancer diagnosis, and I'm really thinking about putting together a healing circle of high-level executive women who have been touched by cancer. And I know a little bit about your story. Is that something that you would have any interest in belonging to? And she just looks at me. She goes, I'm in. And she just did not hesitate for one iota.
Good for her.
And the next day, literally, I was going to the Women's and Employment Resource Center event, where I knew many executive leaders in our community. And not only the executive director of that particular organization, other executive directors of other local not-for-profit organizations, all who have been dear friends, who I had known had kept their journeys very quiet, very private. So I was reluctant to ask them, but at that point in time, I pulled each one aside, and literally there was 3 gals there that evening, and I said, I'm thinking of putting together this healing circle for high-level executive women touched by cancer. Is that something that you would have any interest in? They said, absolutely, we would love that. So in short order, literally within a few weeks, I had 10 executive women, every single one of them, that said yes. And it started off as simple as having dinner and going around the room and hearing everybody's story. And it was absolutely remarkable to hear the journey of these women, strong, courageous, smart, intelligent, hardworking, vulnerable women willing to share their stories for a greater good. Mm-hmm. And so for me, when I kept saying, God, what am I supposed to do? How can I impact? What impact can I make? How can it be a greater impact? The gift is bringing these phenomenal women together to be resource for each other. Mm-hmm. So it's not just my story, it's all of their stories. Each one of these women are so incredibly inspirational. Mm-hmm. So more importantly, I feel that my next book is really focused on them, mm-hmm. what each one of them's journey has been, highlighting all of us and the common themes that we've had challenges with the medical community. We've had challenges of how do we build our businesses at the same time we're going through treatments? Mm-hmm. Do we choose to share our news with clients? Do we choose to share our news with our coworkers? Mm-hmm. When is that right timing? How do we share this information? What do we do? How do we make sure it's part of the journey, but at the same time, these are our livelihoods. I mean, I really need to keep building my business, and I didn't want it to be a vulnerability. Mm-hmm. So having these women to be able to have as a sounding board of directors and to be able to discuss these issues has truly been one of the ways I feel that I have made an impact and continue to make an impact. We are now 28 strong mm-hmm. in our community. We have 2 chapters. Each chapter is a unique mix of executive women, women-owned businesses, and we've continued to meet once a month for dinner. And now we've had a variety of unique speakers that are coming to us about topics that are of interest to each one of our groups. Now we're meeting collectively in the synergies of mm-hmm. this 28 women. It is truly an incredible process to behold. And so if nothing more, I just feel incredibly proud of that part of that accomplishment, because these women are rock stars. Yeah. They truly are. Just gifts.
You've left a legacy for sure, and I would imagine that it's really healing for everybody to be a part of these circles. We have a coach, Carol Heaney, in the Spirit of Healing, is a part of Hammock Way of Life, and she's been doing some things with the second group that you started.
Yes,
and so
indeed.
It's been really great to see how that has expanded and helped so many women on that journey.
There is no question. Yeah. Carol has been co-facilitator in Chapter 2, and she is somebody that I met the same evening that we met.
Interesting.
And interestingly enough, and so that was a really, really wonderful opportunity. And just coincidentally, serendipitously, it's an event that I'll be going to this evening again for somebody that hosts a wonderful evening for women in our community. So it's great connections all the way around.
So I want to get into a little bit about every year you venture to new places all over the place, mm-hmm. and travel is one of the things. Usually there's blocks of things that people have dreams about. It's business or love, but travel is one of them.
Yes, it is.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about your adventures and where you're going next.
Okay, so because I grew up in, again, this household of both of my parents, my father is Italian. My mother was born and raised in Ecuador in South America. And so at my earliest recollections, I was 8 years old, and we traveled to Spain for a month in the summer of our summer vacation. And I just absolutely fell in love with the people of Spain, the cultural, the food, the ambiance, the richness of family dynamics there. It was just such a fascinating experience for me that I just felt so connected to that part of the world. Mm-hmm. And so my next travels I was in high school, and I had the privilege to, our family hosted a Spanish student, and he came to live with us for a couple of months, and so he invited me back to Spain, and so I had a second visit. Nice. And then my next travels were, my term abroad was in, I went to Union College, and I have a background in mechanical engineering and economics, so a more technical, professional academic backdrop. But one of my favorite classes was art and history of of the world. And so just learning about the history of art, and seeing slides, because they were slides back at that point in time, 35 plus years ago. And I was just fascinated with art because, again, my mother was an artist. My grandfather was an Italian sculptor who grew up in Calabria, Italy, my maiden name. And so he came to this country and did all kinds of Italian sculpting in churches and buildings and beautiful things, many things that I have in my home today, both my mother's and my grandfather's. And so I just grew up with a love of art and travel. When you're in Spain, when you're in any part of Europe, the riches of the churches, of the architecture everywhere on the street, I was just enamored. So I chose to do my term abroad in Spain, in Sevilla. And then before the term, I traveled to England, to France, and after the term, I traveled to Italy. And at that point, I was just smitten. I said, when I grow up and when I have a job of my own and when I have money of my own, I would love to be able to travel. And I've just been truly fascinated with Europe. So each year, frankly, as soon as the kids were old enough to travel, our first country was Ireland, and then we went to Italy, and we did the traditional Rome, Florence, and Venice. We have been to Greece, we have been to Austria, Vienna, Budapest, Hungary, France, southern France, Paris, Switzerland. Our latest was to Portugal with my daughter and I. We've traveled a couple of times, just the two of us, but mostly we've traveled with the four of us. We were in Croatia, just absolutely loving Germany, so many different of the popular tourist destinations. But we find a way to find the little offbeats and smaller towns, smaller communities. I truly travel with my little iPhone, and I take pictures, and I produce these phenomenal scrapbooks of the journeys that we have. And again, for me, it is all about traveling with my family and enjoying just the cultural richness, trying to learn a little bit about the language and the customs and the food. And so where's next? Who knows? We met while we were in Portugal on New Year's Eve. We ended up meeting up with a group from Holland, and I was just enamored with the tulips and the festivals, and I thought that might be, my husband doesn't know it yet, but that's where I think it would be a great place for him and I to go, on our own, and looking forward to that next adventure. And of course, we did go to Ecuador. That was one of the earliest, Ireland was one of the earliest trips, because to celebrate my husband's heritage, is part Irish. And then we went to Ecuador truly to uncover my mother's roots. And so we did the whole tour of the country and with our whole family. And again, really honoring that part of my mother and her heritage. And of course, we did the whole southern boot of Italy, in Calabria. And we went to the little teeny church that my grandparents were married in. And the adventures of getting from one of my grandparents' little towns to the other was literally straight up a mountain that was just, we were in the clouds. Wow. Truly, it was honestly scary because you're going up and down. My husband was driving. It was terrifying. It was one of the most terrifying experiences we've had traveling, but it was worth it to get to this little teeny town. We went to the church that my parents and grandparents were married in. My dad had written his own memoirs, Let It Be a Dance, My Life Story. So I took his book with me, brought it to that church, put it on the altar, and just, embrace that opportunity to honor him and that legacy that we feel so strongly connected to, the Italian part of our ancestry, of which I am now, I've learned very quickly, 64%. So there's a strong, strong Italian side. So maybe that's, the draw and the love of traveling in Europe and all over.
Do you speak Italian?
I have tried many times, but I cannot say in any way that there's proficiency there. But, buongiorno and ciao and, buonasera, a couple of the basics is something I enjoy. But I do speak Spanish. I did grow up speaking Spanish, so that backdrop my mother had shared with us and how wonderful that was. So it's been fabulous.
So I want to ask you one thing. I know you attended a vision board session with Hammock Life. Can you tell us a little bit about that process, and did things come true on your vision board and things like that?
That is, it was a fabulous experience, and it was my very first vision board experience. Since then, I've seen some other nuances of vision boarding, and each one has been unique and different, but that was a fabulous experience, and I remember it vividly in terms of really being thoughtful as to, what is the center of my universe? The center of my universe has always been my family. Having the truly love of my life and having a high school sweetheart and having such a strong relationship really has been the cornerstone. Having 2 children, we have been incredibly, incredibly blessed with 2, wonderful children, a son and a daughter. And so that was always right front and center of my vision board. And then around those things were things that I've always loved, travel being one of them. And so what were those next travels? Spirituality in the sense of a groundedness, a centeredness, a meditative, a yoga, a quieting of the mind. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm this type A personality. I've got a lot of energy, and it comes through in just about everything I do. So I do have to counterbalance that. Because in our household we call it, it's a curse and a challenge all at the same time. A curse and a challenge and a benefit. Sure. So there's 2 sides of it, and so it is a quieting of the mind. And so I have created spaces here in my home and my yard to have that more quiet time and reflective time. So I remember having that on the vision board. As a result of that, I remember creating the back porch as a space, and it had been created, but not in the way that I was utilizing it for space to actually do my yoga and meditative and read and have quiet time. So I really brought it to the next level, and I really feel great. That was one result as a result of the vision board. I've always loved fashion, and I remember that being part of it, and I still continue to, and I definitely do shopping therapy, probably way too more often than I care to admit, but it's something that I really do enjoy, sure. Especially with a girlfriend. The one very strong outcome of that particular vision board was, at the time, I was looking to hire an additional partner because my best friend in the world was in a transition phase to retirement. So 2.5 years ago, I was trying to think about who would be the right fit for our business team that has been in operation. It has been traditionally an all-women financial advisory team for approximately 20 years. My husband did come into the business with me for a couple of years and then moved on to back to his traditional career path. And so I was just trying to find the right fit, and I didn't know who that was. I had cut out lots of pictures. Traditionally, they were women with experience, all ethnicities I had presented on my board. And it was fascinating that I looked at that and said, I've been surrounded in a very male-dominated industry, so always hoping to continue to carry the legacy for other women, but never opposed to just finding the right person, just as I did with my husband at the time. It was a great fit. And the reality is, I really thought I was going to hire one person that looked exactly like one of the images, and it simply wasn't the right timing for her in her career. So the individual that I ended up hiring was a gentleman, and I was surprised by that, as we went through the interview process. It really was just an immediate, wonderful connection, resonated. I really was just so impressed with this individual, positive attitude, willing to do whatever it took. And in our industry, the reality is it is a tremendous, tremendous amount of hard work, and you need a team player. And so at first I thought, wow, that's very different than my vision board. And so I went and took out the vision board, and I went back to it, and I looked at it, and I said, oh my goodness, there he is. That he's exactly right there. Really, so he was there the whole time. Yeah. I just didn't remember it. So the power of the vision board is you're doing it in the moment. You're thinking long term, But at that time, your recollection might not be until you go back and see, yes, in fact, it was there. It might not have been the strongest vision, but it was there all along.
Yeah, I always tell people, be careful what you wish for,
in
terms of words and pictures on those
Indeed.
things.
So it was very, very powerful. And we had, in addition to the vision board, I had this individual along with the rest of my team. And in fact, my daughter was working as an intern with us that particular summer. And so I had my other two business partners, my daughter, this new potential business partner, and myself complete the DISC assessments. So for anybody in business, whether it's a Myers-Briggs or any other type of personality assessment, we did complete them all, and we laid them all down next to each other. And traditionally, you were supposed to find a team that is well-rounded, that you each have different skill sets. So one of the business partners on my team clearly has a very different skill set from the rest of us, and she is outstanding in the administrative, the analytical side of things, the inside person, if you will. She is outstanding at that. My business partner, Carol, and I are very similar, and frankly, we've just, again, been best friends in the world and great business partners because we've always thought alike. My daughter had some similarities, but I was surprised that she had some really unique differences, and again, that would be ideal for our teaming. Of course, she's there just as a summer, and we just figured we would engage her in that process. And here is my potential new business partner, and when we looked at them, we literally looked at them side by side, and you truly could have put them right on top of each other. They were even more identical than my business partner for 22 years. Nice. So again, thinking you're supposed to hire outside things, I know are important, and someday maybe our team will expand with those, but for now, it was that commonality, and that it was that common interest that so far 2.5 years has been a fantastic fit, and here we are. So as a result of the vision board, absolutely wonderful experience. You were an incredible host, and it really was impactful. So I would highly encourage anybody to do it. Come to the Hammock Way of Life, look at your vision, make it a dream, make it come to true.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So any other words of wisdom, anything I've forgotten, anything else that you would like to say to inspire people going forward? Just this is your chance to shine in these last few seconds. You've been wonderful.
I genuinely do really appreciate the opportunity just to have this conversation with you. I think that I have always been a little bit reserved in protecting that vulnerable part of me, only that because of what I've chosen to do as a profession, it's scary. It's scary to share that vulnerable side of you. Here we're supposed to be the ones that are, managing, truly millions and millions of dollars. We're the strong ones, and what I've learned along the way is it is perfectly fine to have that strength, that intellect, that hard work, that character, integrity. It is my mantra. I feel so strongly about it. But what I've learned along the way of life is that it is those vulnerable moments and your willingness to be your authentic self, to really let people in, because we only come around this world once.
Right.
And for me, it is about those strong connections, it is about those friendships, and it's about letting people in. And it's not just showing the perfect side of a family or the perfect side of what people perceive everybody's lives to be. We all have challenges. We all have struggles. We all have dark, deep challenges. It's how we get through them. And in my book, it's be willing to be vulnerable, be willing to be your authentic self, be willing to ask for help. And you just might be so pleasantly surprised as what comes as a result. And I feel so incredibly grateful, blessed for the life that I've been given. And I'm just going to take every day one step at a time and enjoy the journey. And wonderful. I invite you to do the same.
Excellent. Thank you so much. What a role model you are. I'm so grateful to know you, and you're an inspiration. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.